Hello and welcome to Manga 96, and today we're going to talk about Arifureta Shokugyou de Sekai Saikyou. Today's topic will be the so-called god who was responsible for the summoning incident as well as responsible for every shitty situation that happened in Tortos. With this god essentially being a ball of arrogance, lust, cowardness and fear of death, so it isn't at all surprising that he is the cause of so much shit in Tortos. I'm of course talking about the false god Ehit. But before we start, here's the spoiler warning, as I'll be spoiling a lot of things in this video, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I would highly recommend that you go and read the light novel, as it is an enjoyable read. For everyone else, let's start with who this god is. Ehit was the pseudo-god who once ruled over Tortos through the doctrine passed through various disciples. He would use everyone as disposable game pieces on a game board, aka Tortos, and enjoy playing with the lives of people while leading them straight to their doom until humanity turned against him and after the truth was revealed by both Aiko and Liliana. During the final battle in Tortos against the false god, Ehit was killed by Hajime, thus ending the fate god's so-called chessboard of life and death for all eternity. Ehit was originally kind, or at least considerate enough to help people in need, as seen when along with the fellow survivors who escaped to Tortos saw how people were terrorized by magical beasts and monsters. He, along with their fellow comrades, decided to help the people of Tortos to fend off the threats and also gave them knowledge so they could develop and prosper. It was even rumored that Ehit had used the miracle elixir Ambrosia to heal the masses. But over the course of millennia, after achieving immortality and becoming a soul-like existence, his mentality started to change, especially after the fellow survivors started to give up on their lives and slowly accepted death. All alone, Ehit's mind slowly corroded and started to feel enjoyment by seeing the suffering of every people he once helped and saved. He developed an immensely cruel and sadistic personality which was filled with malice and contempt, becoming a psychotic evil god who manipulated both humans and demons of Tortos to fight millennia of brutal wars for his own twisted entertainment by posing as two different individual gods which the two races worshipped, as Hajime had correctly guessed. As stated by Noin, Ehit derived the greatest joy by seeing people try their best only to be thwarted and failed in absolute despair when they had reached their goal. As shown when in the past, after the Claros Dragonman tribe had succeeded in achieving world peace after centuries of painstaking effort by building a paradise kingdom where all races lived in harmony, as well as creating a global alliance between countries which will help each other in times of need. Ehit manipulated his worshippers, both humans and demons, to betray the Dragonman by declaring them as a race of heretical monsters, destroying the multiracial kingdom the Dragonman had worked so hard to build, even driving them into hiding for centuries. When his arch-nemesis, the Liberators, had been ready to start the revolution to overthrow Ehit after immense efforts, he cleverly manipulated his own worshippers, the very people the Liberators wished to protect, to turn against them, ultimately forcing to part ways and build a great labyrinth to hide himself in. He also wanted his so-called summoned heroes to die their miserable deaths and to ensure they will never leave Tortos back to their own world alive. Ehit also supported Eri and Hiyama in betraying their classmates due to finding their intentions and actions amusing. His ego also inflated to extreme levels, which developed into a selfish, narcissistic and prideful nature. Ehit felt joy in staying one step ahead against the enemies with the designed plans, but doesn't like it when the plans don't go the way as needed. He viewed humanity to be weak and playthings as he is toying with their lives. Ehit is also failure intolerant, who holds no use for his weak pawns and disposes them of their uses as a sign of disappointment to himself, as his pawn brought nothing but shame upon him so miserably, such as Hiyama was killed by Hajime and his greatest pawn, Koki, gotten defeated by Hajime so easily in the Frost Caverns. He adopted a use for Koki by manipulating his newly servant, Eri, willing to give Koki to her as a price for her services. He holds a lust for immortality, as he once tried to search for Yue and possessed her as a host body. When he learned that Yue was with Hajime, Ehit immediately sent his minions to seize her. After Eri retrieved Yue, Ehit temporarily possessed Yue's body, which caused Hajime to his rage-consumed state. While using Yue's body, he didn't get complete control over her, which caused his death when Yue's willpower freed herself from his control, leaving Ehit vulnerable as Hajime killed the false god. Ehit is also a manipulative liar who deceived humans that beastmen were just an inferior species. His beliefs of protecting humanity against Garland were just a setup which would lead his pawns to their deaths. While the truth has been revealed, Ehit doesn't have anyone else to manipulate after humanity turned against him. However, Ehit has revealed himself to be a coward, as he holds a fear of death or his true nature being revealed, which is the legacy of the liberators that had caused him to develop a nature which needs to do anything necessary to stay alive. He fears Hajime worse than the liberators due to his unconcern for Tortoise and its people when he simply unleashed a massacre and genocide towards both of Ehit's human and demon worshippers, as he wanted to eliminate him and his companions, at all cost by sending Noid to assassinate Hajime. He is shown in a sheer of terror when Hajime killed Noid and used her body to revive Kaori as an insult to the so-called god. When his true nature has been revealed, he is shown in fears of his human worshippers has turned against him, as well losing the balance to his little chessboard of life and death for immortality. He is also very paranoid, attempting to do whatever means to stay alive by attempting to unleash an omnicide by wiping out not only the human race but beastman race, as well as to ensure his regime as a god continues to proceed by sending out 500 apostles. Ironically, it was Ehit's tremendous arrogance and lust for immortality that had ultimately became his downfall when Yue freed herself from his influence and left him defenseless against Hajime, who slayed him. As for his past, he belonged to a race of beings that resided in another world. When that world was being slowly destroyed by an unknown cause, Ehit was among a group of survivors that escaped to Tortoise. Once they arrived, the survivors helped the inhabitants of their new home advancing their civilization, which at that point was extremely underdeveloped. Eventually, the survivors dwindled down to only Ehit. In order to escape death, Ehit transcended into a god and even had developed a religion called the Holy Church. Over time, Ehit's personality became extremely cruel, finding enjoyment in terrorizing the other beings of his new world, responsible for mass religion wars, disasters, and famine. One such example was when Ehit orchestrated the destruction of the sacred kingdom Klystron, which was also the most devoted nation at the time. The reason behind this act was so that Ehit could absorb all the mana in the area and create a realm for the gods of Tortoise, known as the Sanctuary. The result from such an act would transform the entire region into what would later be known as the Gruen Desert. In order to ensure a series of perpetual warfare in Tortoise, Ehit created several servile gods that each race would worship individually and would be willing to fight on their behalf. An example would be the demon's god Alwa. At some point in time, Ehit fought against Urald, who was the first avatar of the Grand Tree that acted as a branch for the World Tree in True World Astral, as well as the hero of that era, and defeated them both. Before her death, however, Urald used the last of her strength to transfer her spirit into the hero's Holy Sword artifact that was created to defeat him. One day, Ehit's divine oracle from the Holy Church, Belta Livre, accidentally came into contact with one of Ehit's apostles and saw the true nature of the god she and her religion revered. This prompted Ehit to have Belta killed in order to keep what she knew a secret from the rest of the world, while telling a surprised Belta that this was akin to discarding a toy. Despite Ehit's efforts, Belta miraculously survived and went on to recruit more people that wished to oppose both the Holy Church and its god. Those people would later form the anti-church organization, the Liberators, that also included the 7 children of Ehit that each possessed one of the ancient magics they inherited from Tortoise god. Ultimately, however, their fight against the god resulted in the death of almost all of their members over the course of years. The defeated 7 core most powerful members of the organization decided to seclude themselves into a self-made labyrinth around the world, where they could pass on their ancient magic to those people who in the future might want to renew their fight against the unfair world and would need the strength to do so. As time passed, Ehit's regime over Tortoise continued for countless years. As for his relationship with Hajime, Ehit's latest arch-enemy and killer from his summoned heroes, at first he thought little of Hajime, simply giving him a common non-combat job class of synergist without any other blessings such as superhumanly enhanced abilities and a variety of skills as Hajime's classmates had. After Hajime fell into the Orcus dungeon and succeeded in conquering it, he learned from Oscar about Ehit's true nature and thus refused to rejoin his classmates and aid the Holy Church and Highly Kingdom in the war against the demons due to realizing that the war that Ehit summoned them to participate in was simply another twisted entertainment of his, and he had in reality summoned them to Tortoise to be pawns in his mad game of death. Hajime proved himself to be a far greater threat to Ehit than the liberators themselves, not only due to Hajime's newfound immense power, but also his complete disinterest in the well-being of the people of Tortoise. Ehit's methods of turning his worshippers on those who go against him failed to work on Hajime, as unlike the liberators, Hajime could not care less about Tortoise and its people due to his new ruthless personality, who is perfectly content to massacre every last one of his worshippers, be they human or demons, if they come after him. At Ehit's orders, proven when Hajime and his party massacred a majority of Fritz's army along with Ishtar and the bishop of the Holy Church in the Highly Kingdom when they tried to attack Hajime at Ehit's insignations. Ehit thus sent one of his god's apostles, Noint, to kill Hajime, only for Hajime to succeed in slaying Noint. As a last insult, Hajime used Noint's body as a vessel for Kaori, as well as managed to expose the truth of a non-existent benevolent Ehit that villainized the real Ehit as a new evil god who was posed to as the benevolent Ehit, effectively turning the humans of Tortoise, who were supposed to be his devoted worshippers, to turn against the false god himself, with the help of Aiko and Princess Liliana. In the final battle, Hajime fought Ehit while he took over Yue's body until he got separated from her body by her own free will, and later killed the false god to end his chessboard of life and death forever. After killing Ehit, Hajime earned his new reputation from his classmates as the god-slaying demon king, meaning he can kill any deities or immortal beings. With this, I covered everything that I wanted to cover on Ehit. And that will be all for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribe to the channel for more manga reviews and One Piece content. And until next time, take care.